Oshinoko is facing a massive controversy after its release of episode 6, and I can honestly say probably episode 7 as well. There is a very touchy subject here that it's getting into, and obviously those that have experienced it are going to feel very, very hurt by this. And I think the controversy itself is something that I've been contemplating even wanting to talk about, because honestly, the person's hurt. And there's another side to this, is that the interview itself that has kind of spurred up this whole controversy has been removed. So it sort of tells me that this person doesn't want to talk about it anymore, or at least doesn't want to be public anymore. So I'm kind of debating here how I want to address this particular subject, because it's obvious they want to get away from this. And it's sort of recreated exactly what we see touched on in episode 6. For those that aren't aware, episode 6 itself is a episode that's kind of covering the concept of somebody being on a reality TV show, some sort of dispute happening, and thus the entire social media networks and everything, a large group of people are now really hitting heavy on them, insulting them, and wanting them to end themselves. And it leads the character to that point, to that breaking point. And to give people a little more context here, the chapter that episode 6 covered of Oshinoko was released just a few months after an actual real-life incident happened. So the mother of the person involved with that is upset. And again, I don't want to get into the details of all that stuff because it's obvious that person wants to get out of the light. And I think that's a good thing for them. And my heart breaks for them. My deepest condolences for them. I could not even imagine having to go through that. I've dealt with people very close to that, and it hurts a lot. And I couldn't imagine that particular person get to that point. I'm so sorry. But as I debated if I wanted to talk about this subject, the main core thing that pushed me to want to talk about this is more the fact that this needs to be talked about. Whether you want it to be talked about or not, whether you say that it was inspired by it or not, the indications to me seems like it's just bad timing. But it doesn't change my own core values that stuff like this has to be talked about. People need to see the nastinesses of themselves in order to correct themselves. And I think, honestly, in my opinion, that's what Akasaka is doing here, because it really does feel like this stuff is genuine. And it's honestly something he was doing from the very beginning. The very beginning of the story is about somebody being attacked by a stalker. It's something that happens in real life, and it's something that hit home to him, and thus he wanted to tell that story. Unfortunately, every story is going to hit people differently. A prime example for myself. Here recently, somebody that I'm very close to, very, very close to, had a very bad divorce. It was a divorce to the point where he wanted to end his own life. Added to that the fact that he had an episode of something that is affecting his thought processes, it pushes him even further. It got to the point now, after a year, if he ever watches something that includes people in a relationship, that is enough to make him want to do that. And it doesn't make me go, I want all stories of love to be gone, because it makes him hurt so much. Again, enough to the point where he's told me before, just by seeing somebody be happy and in love on screen, he wants to stop. He wants to do that. But that doesn't mean that I don't want it to exist, because people still need to see these stories. But that's just, again, something that's in a bottle here. That's what he experiences. And it's true for everything like this, similar to there. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are at the end of the rope. If they watch episode 6 of Oshinoko, it's going to push them and it's going to hurt them. And anybody involved with somebody that has dealt with that is going to feel that hurt come back up. But it still needs to exist, in my opinion. Because if we become a society where every tough subject is not talked about, it will continue. If episode 6 can tell somebody that does that, stop, that's enough for me. One person to stop this, it's important. This is a very hard to see subject. And there are words on the screen that I see on a daily basis, and so many people see on a daily basis. They're not unique to this particular case. This is a problem, and it needs to be fixed. And unless This is what I think this is doing. This is what I truly believe this is doing. And if the author comes out later on and says, haha, fooled you all, I just want to make money off of it, I'll change my mind. But from what I'm seeing, the passion and how it's portrayed, it tells me it's the desire to say, hey, disgusting people, look at this disgusting self of yours. Stop. There is a real person behind that screen. Stop it. Stop doing this. Everything that has been portrayed in Oshinoko is stuff that I have seen and I've read about and I have studied in the entertainment industry. Every episode impression I do, what do I keep saying? He's right. I've seen it. And I think there's so many other people out there that do the same thing. He's right. I've seen this. I have experienced this. I have went through this and it hurt me. And I had the same thoughts. Episode 7, Kana says it so perfectly, obviously through the writing of Akasaka. 50 people, over 50 people in reality TV have done this. Times it by 10, at least. That's a, I think in my opinion, a very low ball there. Have thought about it. That's the bigger picture. Yes, the statistics say this number because that's how many people unfortunately follow through with it. But there's a larger number of people that thankfully failed or thankfully somebody reached out and stopped them. And if you can't address it, how do people know? How will people know that people are hurting? How will people know that this needs to stop unless you show it? And that's exactly why I feel like this does not need to stop. I don't think it's going to stop. I don't think this show's going to get shut down. I don't think the manga is going to get shut down because similar to this episode, episode 7, it's this people here, again, rightfully so, are hurt by this. But a larger group of people are having their eyes opened up to why they're hurting. That's exactly why it should exist. And that sort of hurts me. And I again, it's hard for me to understand her fully. It kind of is the part that confuses me because I think that you'd want this to be said. You'd want this to be said and told to people, look what you did to this girl. Look what you're doing to them. This is a good thing to show. And yes, will they make money from this? Of course. Yes, they're making money. Yes, they're selling the manga. Yes, they're profiting on this. But if this will fuel more of this storytelling, give him all the damn money in the world he needs. Because if he can have a message while entertaining, people will be entertained to that point where the message hits them and says, stop being entertained and wake up. That's where this hits. That's why it should exist. I want to make it extremely clear that, again, this interview for this person that's hurting, that believes that this was profiting off of them, had the interview taken down. I wish that people, if you're involved in communicating, stop throwing hate back and forth. Because again, I think the original reason why I didn't even want to cover this whole topic was because I didn't want to have to give the context, because the context itself is literally that story. It is somebody crying out, this hurts me, and I think you're profiting off of me. And then people returning hatred at that person because they love Oshinoko so much, they're literally doing what the story says. Stop. Yes, she's technically doing it, but everybody's doing it back at them. And it's turning into exactly why this whole thing sucks. People constantly having to get involved with somebody else that they shouldn't get involved with, and they're making it only worse. They're hurting them more, and they're hurting back more. Everybody's hurting in the end. It doesn't stop. And again, I think that's probably why they took down the interview. They're like, stop. I just don't want this anymore. I don't want to see this anymore. People are attacking me now, and it's hurting. It also brings up the important question of, should they watch this? It kind of hurts in the idea that, yes, somebody who sees this show that has experienced it is going to be hurt by it. And I think that's one of those things where each individual person needs to know they have to stop when they reach that certain point. I've had times where right after I lost my father, I watched a show and it talks about losing a parent. And I had to gauge for myself, wait, stop. I don't need to see this right now. I need to back out of this. If you see the signs, which I would argue in this particular story, it's pretty obvious the direction it's going, back out quick. Back out quick. You don't need to watch it. You don't need to see the whole thing. There's no point in watching it. One of the statements was the fact that a friend watched it and they were crushed because they seen it. And it's like, then you need to stop. Granted, it's a little harder when the signs aren't there and it just pops up in the front of the screen, but you can see it. And maybe they thought that watching it could have been a healing thing. And that's possible. But just know that there's a lot of topics covered in mediums like this that are going to hurt you. It's like the person that I mentioned earlier. You have this case where you have a really disastrous divorce, and every time you see love, it hurts you. You just have to step away from it. But you can't say that it can't exist. Without a doubt, with episode 6 / whatever chapter it was of Oshinoko's manga, is hitting on a subject that is very prevalent. I'm not putting words into their mouths, but to say that this is just about this one person is not seeing the bigger picture. There is a lot, thousands upon thousands, if not millions of people who deal with the same exact thing. It's not to belittle that situation, it's to acknowledge that this is a broader issue in this world, and a lot of people are hurting. And if Oshinoko can make people stop, I want it to exist. I do want to also note, and I think a lot of people aren't covering this particular aspect of this interview that was taken down. They say specifically, I don't mean to blame the author or the individual. I wonder if there was no one who took care of this work when it was released to the world. That makes me sad. I would like to support such works if possible. However, I don't think it should be done in a way that makes people who have actually suffered damage on social media find it painful. They're saying also that it should exist. It just hurt them, plain and simple. Their issue was just certain things within the story that hit a little too close to home. My argument is that it should exist no matter what, because it's not to serve those that are already hurt, but rather stop those from hurting them. Which honestly, it's hard to say the message if you hold back, because then people don't take it seriously. But either way, I just had to get this off my chest, and the more I thought about it, and the more honestly personal it got, the more that I wanted to talk about it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. Again, it's not to sensationalize this whole topic. And as per usual, and similar to what I said with episode 6 impressions, if you're out there and you're hurting, please reach out to somebody. There's somebody out there that cares for you. And even if you don't think somebody cares about you, find a neutral party. There's somebody out there to listen to you. I know that a lot of cases, people in that regard just feel like there's nobody to reach out to, because those that they immediately think about, they don't think will listen or will understand. There's somebody out there. Find a neutral party that just has an open ear and talk to them. With that said, thank you guys for watching, and y'all take care.